I'm Christy, and we need to chat about intellectual property, copyright, and fair use. So let's start with intellectual property. What is it exactly? According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, intellectual property is property as an idea, invention, or process that derives from the work of the mind or intellect. With intellectual property comes copyright and fair use. Now, we've all heard the word copyright, so I'm sure you already know copyright is the legal right to be the only one to reproduce, publish, and sell a book, musical recording, etc. for a certain period of time. Fair use. In Christie terms, it's the rule that permits students to use a part of that copyrighted material for educational purposes. So how did this all get started? Let's talk about the Copyright Law of 1976. It's the basis of copyright law here in the United States. Now, as time changes and technology improves, updates have to be made. And we know that technology is changing fast. Most of the updates on this law have been about every 10 years or so. So you might be asking yourself, how does copyright affect you as a teacher? Well, let me just say, we as teachers have to abide by copyright law. Although there's probably not going to be anyone standing at your door ensuring that, that we abide by these laws, getting caught could cost you up to $100,000. And I don't know about you, but my teacher salary probably couldn't cover that cost. Okay, so let's look at what's protected under copyright law. Literary works. Musical works, including any accompanying words. Dramatic works, including any accompanying music. Pantomimes, and choreographic works. Pictorial, graphic, and sculptural works. Of course, motion pictures, and then other audiovisual works. Sound recordings, and architectural works, and we can't forget computer software. Okay, so let's look at the guidelines for fair use. You have to ask yourself 4 questions. First, why do I even need this? How am I going to be using it? How much of the work will I be using? Because less is best. And then for me, the last question is one of the easiest to answer. Is what I'm doing going to have an effect on the market potential for this work? Because it usually does come down to the money aspect. Okay, so it seems like there's so many rules, and you don't want to be out $100,000. Should you even just avoid using digital print media altogether because copyright is so complicated? No! Absolutely not. Do not avoid it. There's too many great things out there that have already been created, and we need to take advantage of them. We just have to do it the right way. There's so many things offered to us. Creative Commons, Pixabay, Stock Exchange, Morgfile, stock free images, PhotoPen, Flickr, and Wikipedia. These are things that we can use. We just have to give the attributions for them. Okay, so now that we've talked about the rules, the guidelines, the fines, now you kind of need to know what to look for. Maybe there are some guidelines out there. Well, I did find a great resource. So if you'll stop this video, jot down that website, it will take you directly to a spreadsheet of information for each kind of work that you could be using in your classroom. It's a great resource to have. So there were 3 words that I mentioned earlier: Creative Commons, public domain, and attribution. Let's go ahead and talk about those. First of all, we'll talk about Creative Commons. Now, Creative Commons is a nonprofit organization, and they've put together an arrangement of works that can be shared legally. Now, Creative Commons licenses are not an alternative to copyright. They work alongside of copyright. So, like songs and pictures, videos, and written works, they're available for use legally. So let's talk about public domain. I know you've heard about it, and it's things that you can use. But guess why you can use it? It's because those are the ones that have intellectual property rights that have expired, have been forfeited, or inapplicable. Okay, attribution. Now listen, just because you've given credit where credit is due does not mean that you have permission to use the work. The best thing to do is make sure you're following all the guidelines, and if necessary, you may need to contact the artist. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is why should you even care about intellectual property, copyright, and fair use? This to me is the most important. Number one, it's the law. We're teachers, we need to be setting the example. Our students need to see that we're following the rules, even if they don't seem like they matter. It's not like you're going to have some guy from Disney standing outside your door waiting to hear the music that he's created. But we know, your students know, and if we're teaching them, we need to abide by the law. We need to set an example. But most importantly, as teachers, what do we want to do? We want to encourage creativity. How much more will your students learn if they're able to create it themselves instead of just going to find it on the internet? To me, creativity, that's the most important part.